Good day, friends. Scooter here at Granville Guitars in lovely St. Petersburg, Florida. Today is January the 25th, 2019, and up on the bench I have a very special Marshall 100 watt JMP. It's a Mark II model 1959, and this particular amplifier belonged to the band Boston, specifically the guitarist Barry Goudreau. Not the main guy Tom Scholz, but Barry Goudreau, who's a guitar player and singer with that band, you know, all through their formative record-selling years. This amp, we're told, the information I've gotten back from the guy who bought this amp from Barry has told me that this amp was used on stage a lot through those years. It was purchased apparently prior to the tours for the first album, and then subsequently used for certain on all the tours for the second album and thereafter, and could possibly have been used in the studio. Not really sure of that. At any rate, it's a 78 Mark II, 1959, as we said. Let's zoom in a little bit here. It's in pretty good shape. It's not really been modded very much. We'll get to the internals here shortly. Let's see if I can put a little bit better light on that. You can see your volume 1, volume 2. You can see all the various markings that have been applied to it over the years. Some white, some black, for different settings that Barry would have used it for. Yeah, it's got the Tolex releasing right there, just slightly. Some of the vinyl has a few chips in it here and there. There's one good-sized one right there. We're going to leave that alone. On first inspection, we powered the amp up, and it's humming a fair amount, more than one would like. And new power tubes did not solve that issue. So I'm going to do a cap job on it. Let's flip it around real quick. First, let's look at the top. Well, here. Flip this around first. And one of the things that you can see on the top of the cab, let me see, I'm going to have to reposition the camera up here. It says stage, and it used to say left right there, although it looks like it was someone had attempted to remove it at some point. And that's where Barry stood with Boston. He inhabited stage left with that band. I saw them back in that day, and Barry was always one of my favorite players. He was just a fantastic player and a great backup singer as well. Did an awful lot of harmony vocals in that band, and great player and performer. Now if we look at the back of the amp, let's see, let's zoom in here a little bit. You can see the production label there, and down in that lower right hand corner it does have a date of 1978. We'll have a better view of that later when I get the chassis out. You can see that someone has actually inscribed number 7 on here with a rotary tool of some sort. It's actually engraved right there, so that it's forever number 7. That's the name of the amp. Barry was kind enough to sign the amp right there underneath where it says Super Lead. That's Barry Goudreau's signature. You can see we've got quite a bit of no, not quite a bit. There's a fair amount of staining and whatnot, but for its age, it's in pretty good shape. There's a view of one of the original filter caps that's going to be coming out. Pretty standard licks back here. Here's a label that's usually missing on these amps. It's kind of nice to see it here. It says caution to prevent electrical shock, kind of a thing. You saw them on some Canadian amplifiers. Although this one doesn't have the array of fuses inside that one would expect on an amp of that era that was made in Canada. Usually, if these labels were ever present, they're missing, but this one has its label, and that's really cool that it does. Yeah, so that's the back view here. One of the other cool things about this amp is that included in the sale was a prototype of the Scholz Power Soak device, which is really cool. Before we have a look inside the amp, let's take a quick peek at the Power Soak. Alright, here it is, folks. You've all seen the Tom Scholz Power Soak, I should say. Here is one of the prototypes for that device, and if you look at old photographs and footage of the band Boston from those years, you will see these devices on stage with them. And again, you can see the white, I don't know what that is, some sort of maybe a crayon or a chalk marker or some kind of chalk marks, I would think, to show the various settings that they were using. This side is labeled straight, and this one is labeled doubled, whatever that might mean, and it has LEDs with those labels. So I'm not sure exactly what those mean, and there's also a jack here for a strobe tuner. And it's built into a case for an old Marshall 100 watt, because it's got the vent on top. Probably early 70s. Anyway, look around back here. You can see that there are actually two of the Power Soak devices in this one head cabinet. I'm going to pop off. This back plate is only being held on currently by one screw. I'm going to pop that off, and we'll have a look inside. Now, before you ask, I'm not plugging into this thing. I hate to disappoint anybody. It's kind of old, and I don't trust it. It's kind of neat as a curiosity of another age, and kind of a neat opportunity to look at something that was associated with a very distinctive sound from a certain era. But I'm not about to plug an amplifier into this thing. So anyway, both sides are, Barry has signed this too. You can see his signature there. Amp, relay, speaker. The relay, as near as we can figure, was used to turn each of them on and off, or they could have been used to relay to different amplifiers. There's a power supply right here in the middle to run the whole thing, and you can see there's a relay right up there, very heavy industrial house wiring style relay. It's kind of Radio Shacked, to be honest with you. Not that he used bad components or anything, but it looks like it was fairly hastily put together to do the required tasks that were needed. And again, over here, speaker, relay, amp. And if you're not familiar with what a Power Soak does, it goes in between the amplifier and the speaker and allows you to run the amplifier hotter and harder and louder as a byproduct, but control the overall volume. So in other words, you can have it sound like it's cranked, but it's actually lower in volume. Let's tilt this just a little bit so you can see in here on the left side there's an enormous load resistor right there, which has to do with bearing the load of the speaker output. I'm fairly certain that that's connected to the relay in some way, and it would take the place of a speaker cabinet while it was being switched around by this relay system here. The other side also, turn this thing around, has a large ceramic resistor in there. It's actually two chained together to give the desired value. So if Tom built this thing, and I'm assuming that he probably did, it looks to me like he just kind of used what he had, used what was available to him, and it's all good work, it's good soldering work. The wiring's a little haphazard. In other words, the wires are kind of strewn around a little bit. That gives me the idea that he probably assembled this thing, you know, fairly hastily. And after it was assembled and working properly, they just never went back and sort of cleaned things up. They just kind of went with it. So anyway, there's a look inside a genuine Scholz Power Soak prototype. Alright, we're back onto the head here. As you can see, there is the assembly label. If this tripod will cooperate with me. There we go. As you can see, this was built for the US. Here's your sign off on assembly. It looks like it might say Shirley. This looks like Carol for the tag board. There's an initial for the test and a date of December. No, wait a second. This is Britain, so we're going to say that that is 12 May 78. So this is May of 78 is when this was tested. As we come up the amp a little bit, you can see it's in pretty good shape. Original caps. Transformers appear to be original as well, which is good. That's what we want to see. Virtually, you know, in really good shape for its age. I've seen much worse. You know, and you would, being that it was Tom Scholz' band that this came from, you would think that this thing might have had some mods to it, but as we're going to see here in a minute, when I flip the chassis over, there's not a whole bunch modded to it. Alright, here we go. Late 70s Marshall, 1959, Mark II Super Lead. We're going to find an awful lot of fairly original stuff in here. We can see a marking that somebody left behind, dated February of 92. So it's had some work done on it, post Boston. We see a lot of original stuff here, original resistors, some original capacitors in place. Matter of fact, the majority of what's here looks to be original. This cap could potentially be replaced. It's a 0.1 400 volts, which is let's see, for the lead units it's supposed to be a 22, so that could be have been replaced. But wait a minute, let's see, never mind. Lead units, 100 watt units. That could be original. It just looks a little bit out of place compared to some of the other caps. We can see here down in the bias supply area that a resistor has been added in parallel right here to change the range of the bias supply. Perhaps in an effort to, this was a USA amp. It was kind of prior to the 6550 sort of era, which was really more into the 80s, but this was late 70s, so I'm thinking it may have been shipped with 6550s. You just don't know sometimes where Marshall is concerned. And then this resistor would have been added in an attempt to alter that favorably for the EL34s that are in it now. Like I said before in the opening, the amp is humming a fair amount. The caps are not bursting or anything, but typically you don't see Marshall caps or Marshall style caps, these multi-can caps. You typically don't see them bursting. You know, that's more something you see typically in a Fender amplifier. But it's humming more than it should, and we're gonna put new caps in this thing. that about does it for the tour of the inside here. Everything looks pretty clean, if not original, which I kind of think a lot of it is. So, yeah, everything looks real good in here. We're going to do the cap job, and we're going to retube it all the way across, and we're going to see what it sounds like. I might play a few Boston riffs through this thing and see what she does. Stand by. Alright, work is all completed. Got the new filter caps in there. Spent a couple hours charging them up, bringing them up slowly on a variac, and everything's golden. We've got about 465 volts of B+, right about in the median range of what you want to see in these amps. Seen them higher, seen them lower. That's a pretty good one. As you can see, the amp is largely stock inside, except for that one added resistor in the bias supply. I was able to set the idle exactly where I wanted it, and everything's looking pretty golden inside here. It sounds really good. I'm going to put it back in the cabinet and play it a little bit for you guys, let you hear it. Alright, everybody, here we are in the home stretch of this Barry Goudreau from Boston amplifier. It's a beast. It's wonderful. Marshalls are maybe my favorite. Could possibly be my favorite amplifier. I just realized I'm cutting off the top of my head. Hang on. Not that you're interested in the top of my head, but there it is. Anyway, it's Friday. What do you want from me? It's Freak Out Friday. It's big and bold and clean. As with a lot of Marshalls, at least the ones that I've come into contact with, the #1 channel is usually pretty brittle and thin sounding. Not really that useful on its own. The 2 channel can sound good on its own, but it lacks a little bit of sparkle to it. And so, of course, you put the little bridge on it, like I've done here, and you get the best of both worlds. You get the fat and the sparkle together, and they're lots of fun. Lots of fun, clean, open sound. Marshalls are associated with a dirtier sound than they really probably deserve because, you know, people crank the crap out of them and they put things in front of them and, you know, all kinds of other stuff. Matter of fact, speaking of which, I'm getting ready to turn on a Granville Mr. Neutron pedal in the front of it, which turned out to be my favorite through this amp today. Tried the Copper Drive, tried the Spiny Norman, tried a few other preamp pedals I have here. The Neutron just gave me what I was looking for out of this amp. It just gives it more teeth. I knew I was going to mess that up. There it is. away from it. It's a Marshall. What can you do? I'm so excited I can't play anything right today. I messed that one up too. Well, you get the idea. It's a riotous rock and roll machine. The great thing about Marshalls, as I was alluding to earlier, is they're nice and clean. I've still got the Neutron on. I just realized it cleans up pretty good. There's with no pedal on it. That's a nice, clean sound. It really is. It's terrific. It's even better when the guitar's in tune. So don't discount the Marshall clean sound because it's wonderful, I think, anyway. So there you kind of have it. Barry Goudreau's old Marshall Mark II Super Lead. 100 watts of pure aggression, but beautiful, sparkly cleanliness when called for. You throw a pedal in front of it. It's rampant. Okay, before I embarrass myself anymore, I'm just going to stop. I've been just having so much fun playing this thing that I can't play anything correctly. Anyway, that about wraps it up for this segment of Scooter's World. Hope y'all have a happy Friday. If you got any questions about anything else that goes on here at Granville Guitars, if I can tell it to you, contact me. We're on the web at www.granvilleguitars.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Facebook, and also over at the blog, A View from the Granville Bench. That's all I got for today. Don't look back.